All right, so we're going to take this problem. We're going to take the first one, put it into just y equals. So if I have y equals negative 3 times x minus 1 plus 6, what's the first step I would do here?
Distribute.
All right, distribute it. Good. So I take this times that. And what does it give me? Negative 3x.
Yeah.
And then what?
Plus 3.
Negative 3 times negative 1, which is plus 3. And then I've still got that plus 6 over there. Right? All in y equals.
You don't multiply that?
I don't multiply by the 6 because it's only being multiplied times what's in the parentheses there. Right? Only multiply by what's in the parentheses. All right, so next. That gives me negative 3x plus what? Plus 9. So there's your first equation, solve for y. I need to do the same thing for the second equation. So if I take the second equation here, I'm going to solve it for y. So I'd subtract 2x first. So negative y is negative 2x plus 1. So what's positive y?
2x minus 1.
2x minus 1. So there's my two equations. Now I'll simply take both of these and I'm going to go and graph them now. So take these and go to graph them. So if you're on your calculator, go to your function editor or y equals. Type in the two graphs, the two equations there, and check for their point of intersection. Remember, to check it, you can only really have two lines showing on there. So if you're showing more than two lines on that graph, go back and clear off any extras that are on there. If not, you'll have to kind of go through and select your which lines you're going to use for the intersection. All right, so 2x minus 1 and negative 3x plus 9. So I'm going to go now and look at the graph. So again, if we look and we see what that graph ends up giving us here. So here's the graph again. So again, the solution is at the point where they're crossing. So at the point 2, 3. Now I'm taking these notes when we do these like this, and they'll all be uploaded to Schoology. So one of the class periods during the day, I'll upload it after we go through it. So on assignments, or if you need to reference back to things, all the work that we do during class together will always be available and put right on Schoology for you. All right. So at the end of this class period, I'll take these and I'll put it on there. So as you're working on things, or if you're studying for tests, you can always reference back to this. All right. Now, next what we're going to do, today we're going to look at substitution method. All right, we're going to take these same problems that we're working on, and we're going to solve them just using a different method. So, for example, let's take the same problem that we just did. All right, so here's the same problem that we just did. We're going to take it and we're going to solve it using a different method. So again, instead of solving by substitution, we're going to solve it using, instead of by graphing, we're going to solve it using substitution. So using substitution for this one instead. Now, in substitution, if you'll look over at your notes, if you'll log on to Schoology real quick, because the assignment, the questions that we'll be working on here shortly, are on there, as well as a PowerPoint over the notes. So you can always reference back to them. So if you'll take a look at it. All right, so if you'll look at your notes there. Now, on the first slide of your notes, you'll see that we're seeing exactly how we're going to solve a system of equations by substitution. All right? We've got the steps that we're using there given to us. It tells you every single piece by piece of what you need to do in order to solve this. So all you do is simply go down through the steps. What's our first step say? All right, solve one equation for one variable. All right, and again, a variable is just a letter, guys. It's our unknown. It's the thing that can change. The x, the y, the a, the b. Whatever it is, the first step is to solve one equation for one of the variables. So if we look back at this problem here, has that been done already? Not quite, right? We have y equals here in the first problem, but it's not in the exact form that we wanted. So as we just did a second ago, what was the first step to get it in slope-intercept form? Distribute. So when I distributed that, I had negative 3x plus 3 plus 6, which was what? 9. So we had negative 3x plus 9 was y. So now I do have it in this form. Y is negative 3x plus 9. So I've taken care of the first step that it asked in our steps. So back to our steps here. I've done the first part. All right, we can check that off. The next part said to substitute that expression from the first step into the other equation. So that means we go back to our equation here. We're going to take this y equals, we're going to substitute it into the next equation for that variable. So I've got 2x minus, instead of y, what do I have? The negative 3x plus 9. That's equal to 1. So all I've done is simply take this here and I've plugged it in for y in that expression. That's all I did is substitute it in for it. So I took this, I plugged it in place of y, and now I'll simplify and solve it. And we know that again because if we reference back to here, we've done that. The next step, simplify and solve that equation. So if I simplify this, I've got 2x, then what? Plus 3x. Not plus 9. Minus 9. Remember, we have to distribute that here and distribute it here.
That acts as a negative 1, doesn't it?
Right, so that's the same thing as us having negative 1 here. So I'd have to distribute the negative 1 by both terms. So that leaves us 5x minus 9 is 1. So I'll add what? Add 9 to both sides, good. So 5x is what? 10. So what's x? 2. We'll just divide it, we get x is 2. So again, looking at our steps here, we simplified it and solved. So we've done the third step now. What's the fourth step say to do? Good, so we'll just take it and substitute it. All right, take it, substitute it for the other equation. So let's go back here. Well, we know that x is 2. So if x is 2, I want to simply just take that, plug it back into either equation. It doesn't matter which one. I can plug it in here. All right. Plug it in for x, and then we'll solve it. And that will give us what y is. So if I do that, I've got y is negative 3 times 2 minus 1 plus 6. So that's the same as negative 3 times what? What's 2 minus 1? Just 1 plus 6. So that's negative 3 plus 6, which is 3. So I now have a value for x and I have a value for y. And the last part is to check it. So you just simply take it and plug it back in to check. Now, we have the ordered pair. X is 2, y is 3 as our answer here. And this was using substitution. Now, when you're solving these, it doesn't matter which method you use, you should get the same answer. So if I reference back to my graph here, notice again on my graph, I got the same solution. Here was x was 2, y was 3. So regardless of which method you use, you'll get the same answer. Now the reason we're doing all these methods is because as after next section, the next section will be on solving with elimination. After that, you'll get to pick which method you want to use because every type of system will be easier to solve using one of the three methods that we'll talk about. All right. There's even a fourth method that we'll just mention briefly. We'll just spend like half a class period on it, and it's called matrices. And then even if you want to consider a fifth method, guess and check is kind of a method you could use on some as well. All right. So there's really 5 different ways that we can solve systems. All 5 will give you the same answer. It's just a matter of picking which one is easiest for that particular problem for you. All right. Now, if you'll go ahead and open up the assignment. So instead of doing the examples on the assignment, I'll leave those examples on there for you to reference back to see more examples. I'm going to go ahead and get you started on the assignment. So we're going to go through several of those questions that you have. It is the one, it's in Schoology. It's under the same date. There's the PowerPoint notes, and right below it, it says the assignment. On number 1, we've got y equals 3x plus 4, and 4x plus 2y is 18. So from our steps, what's the first step that we'll do?
Plug that whole equation into the y.
Good. So we just simply, I'm going to go here. It already tells us in the first step to always do is just to check that one equation is solved for a variable. And that was already done here. Right? We already had y here solved for that variable. Right? So I'm just going to take that. I'm going to plug it in for y here. That'll give us the next expression to work with. So I have 4x plus 2 times, instead of y, I have 3x plus 4. That's all equal to 18. So distribute the 2, good. So distribute it through it. So 4x plus 6x. Plus what? 8. Make sure you do that 2 with the 4. That gives us 18. So going through there, we've got 10x equals what?
10x plus 8 equals.
I have the 10x plus 8, so I move the 8, right?
Yeah, you get 2 minus
10x equals 10.
So 10x is 10, so what's x?
Divide by 10, x equals 1.
Good. So x is 1.
Plug that into the first equation.
Good. Plug that into the first. So we've done this part. We've done the second. We substituted it. We did the third. We already solved it. The next step, substitute it back. And again, that's where the substitution form comes from. Again, solving by substitution because we're going to take an answer and substitute it into the other one. Okay. Again, that's what we're using. Substitution to solve it. So, take this. Plug the 1 in for x. And when I do that, I just have y equals 3 times r1. I didn't have to put the 3 in parentheses. Plus 4.
Do you have to put it in?
No, you didn't have to put the 3 in parentheses. I just messed up. So I could go back. 3 times the 1. Plus the 4. So what's y?
Y 7.
7. So I've done that part now. I've substituted it back and checked it. Last part, check that it works for both of them. Well, I already know it works for the first one because that's what I just plugged in to get that answer. So I know it works on the first one. I need to see if it works on the second one though, because if it doesn't work on both, it's not the answer. So for the second equation, it's just 4 times we put 1 in for x, 7 in for y. That gives us 4 plus 14, which is 18, which is what it said it had to be. All right. So it did work. Now, if you'll go ahead and look at number 2. So go ahead and look here at number 2. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes on that to see what you come up with, again, using substitution. All right, guys, so in this example, what was the first step that you chose to do? All right, put one of them, and again, you just solve either one for whichever variable's easiest. All right? So you want to identify which one of these is the easiest one to get just one variable by itself with. The bottom one. And what's the variable to get by itself?
Y.
We could get y by itself, but what would be easier? To get the x by itself. Why is it easier to get the x by itself?
Oh, so you don't have to have it in Y equals?
On substitution, it doesn't have to be in y equals.
Okay.
You just want to solve one of them for a variable. So if we look back here, notice on our steps, it's just to get one of them solved for a variable. Now, you want it in y equals if we're graphing, but as far as for substitution, that's why it's a different method, is because you don't have to do it the same way. There's problems that's easier just to get something solved by itself, like this one. It's easier to get x because all I have to do is add 3y to both sides. So you know that x is just the positive 3y minus 17. So I've solved something by itself now. So now I would take that for x, plug it into the other one for x, and I could solve it. So if I solve that one, I've got 2 times 3y minus 17 plus the 3y is 2. So what does that simplify to?
6Y minus 34.
Good. 6y minus 34. You still have the 3y over there. So what's that become?
9Y minus 34.
So 9y minus 34 is 2. So what's 9y the same thing as?
9y equals 36.
36. Good. So what's y?
Y equals 4.
Y is 4. Good. So if I know that so if I know I have that, I'll take that y is 4. I'll plug it in to either one of these equations. Now I'm going to plug it in here because that makes it easiest to solve for x, because we already know that x is the same thing as 3 times 4 minus 17. Right? So if I do that and I take that and I plug it in here, that leaves me that x is the same thing as 3 times 4 minus 17, which is what? What kind of 5? Negative 5.
Did
And
you
what-
just plug those in the checker cell?
And just plug them into both to check them. Yes, sir.
Where'd you get the 2 to distribute that for 3y?
Right here on this step,
Yeah, where'd you get that?
all we did is we took the x that we got here and we plugged it in for the x here.
Oh, okay.
So the 2 still stays. We only substitute in for the x.
Okay.
And we end up with, again, our solution. X is negative 5 and y is 4. Make sure you write it as an ordered pair. So negative 5, 4. Just get in the habit of that because remember the x coordinate always has to be written first. So when you're selecting an answer on, let's say the SAT or the ACT, make sure that you're writing the x coordinate first. In an ordered pair like that. All right, let's go ahead and look at number 6. Let's look at number 6. I'm going to give you a few minutes. I want you to take a shot at that. Notice number 6, the difference with it is what?
Fraction.
It has fractions with it. For some reason, a lot of you see a fraction and you just completely shut down. All right, a fraction is still, I mean, it's no different. We're not doing the steps any differently with a fraction. Fractions are just numbers. So solve it the same way that you would just the other ones that we already did, and we'll talk about that here in just a couple minutes. All right, so on this example, again, our steps are the same. Get one of the variables by itself. Which one's easiest to do that with? The top one. Why the top one?
Because you can just subtract 3/4 x.
So subtract 3/4 x. So what's positive y?
Equal to 3/4 x.
Positive 3/4 x. So we know what y is, so we're going to plug that into the second equation. So if I plug it into this one, I'm going to have 3/4 x over 3 plus x over 2 equals 6. Now, when you do 3/4 x over 3, that's the same thing as 3/4 over 3x. So in your calculator, you could do 3/4 over 3 if you need to. But this doesn't require a calculator. This is just simple math. Make sure you're listening. Anytime you have a fraction divided by some integer, that's the same thing as just take the denominator of the fraction and multiply it times that integer. And that's what goes on bottom. Notice 4 is on bottom, 3 is on bottom. So that's the same thing as 3x over 12 plus an x over 2. Now, what's 3 over 12 the same thing as?
1/4.
That's just the same thing as 1/4. So this is the same thing as 1/4 x. No, so x is to the side. The x is not next to the 4. Plus, this is just the same thing as 1/2 x. Because remember, there's still a 1 here. Even though I don't see it, since there's an x, there's still a 1 there. That's all equal to 6.
So then 3/4 x equals 6.
Now, 1/2, remember, we have to have a what in order to add fractions? Common denominator. So what is 1/2 the same thing as? If I need to make it to fourths.
2/4.
That's the same thing as 2/4. So I could get rid of that. I could simply just replace it with 2/4. Okay. So now I know that 3/4 x is 6. So what's just x? How do I get rid of a fraction on the left side? We won't subtract it because it's multiplying right now, right?
Divide by the fraction.
We can divide by the fraction in parentheses. Or, this also means the same thing as doing what? What's the other thing I could do that's easier? Or, if you multiply both sides by its reciprocal, it does the same thing. Both of these give the same answer. This is easier for me to see, though, because I know that 6 times 4 is 24 over 3. I still have the 3 on the bottom, which is what? 8. Now, if you do this part, though, right here, in your calculator, as long as you put that 3/4 in parentheses, you'll still get 8. It's the same thing. Up to you which method you use. So now I know that x is 8, right? So I can come all the way back up there to the beginning. If I know that x is 8, take that 8, plug it in here for x. That gives me 3 times 8 is 24 over 4, which is what? 6. So your y is 6. And then you could check it from there. Now again, so you know the schedule for tomorrow, when you get here after the pep rally, whenever that is. All right, you'll be working on the rest of that assignment. That's on there. So we've already done 1, 2, and 6. So you'll just have 3, 4, and 5. Now on the bottom part, 7, 8, and 9, it says solve with elimination. Do those with substitution as well. Do not do those with elimination. Do them with substitution. So if you want to change that, you can, or if not, it'll be written on the board. And again, I'll upload this to Schoology, so you'll have it there as well.
Are you not gonna be